All right, sorry about that. Just getting prepped for the legislative session in this room after this session and making sure we have everything good to go. But we're gonna go and get started. Anthony, you have like one of the coolest background setups I've seen yet from a speaker.
I'm very happy to hear that. Yeah, I like video games quite a bit. I've been playing them for longer than I care to admit, and I have a little bit of an arcade here. I got a pinball machine over here you can't see, and I have 2 game rooms in the house, and neither one of them are this room, so I'm pretty into it.
Did you say this is your 3rd game room in your house?
This is my office, but yeah, there's 2 game rooms in the house besides this room. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, we know it's good to be Anthony. That's what that's what I'm taking away from there. So I really want to turn it over to you, Anthony. I know there's some things that you can talk about right now.
Right.
I know there's some things that you can't talk about, and that's because of a timing of future announcements. If I were to be informative yet vague enough to not get anyone in trouble.
That's right.
So I'm going to let you go ahead and kind of explain what you can so that maybe people can, take what steps they can for this coming season.
To prepare. Yeah. So
Prepare.
Thank you. I mean, when my company, my background is in media. So my companies that I formed before this company, we created a lot of firsts in media, the first video on demand channel, first free to play company, first CG animated television show, those kind of things. And we always take a look, and I worked for Disney for about 7 years as creative director. And we take a look at the landscape and try to find market niches to see what products will work to both, obviously generate revenue, but also fill a need. And one of the things that we saw when we entered the esports space a few years ago as G3 Esports was sort of a need to consolidate and I don't want to say the word legitimize, but from our view, it was the word legitimize. It legitimized the esports space with a dedicated media. And I know there's Twitch, and I know there's Dexerto. I don't know if I can pronounce that correctly. I never could. I know there's .esports. I know there's some really great, really great esports dedicated sites. But we wanted to take it another level higher than that, and we wanted to bring the old world into the new. So bring some of the leading mainstream sports organizations to this world and do it in a way that was authentic, right? So which means kind of flipping everything they did before and redoing it for a younger generation with new media. So I can announce that we are working with one of the largest sports media organizations in the world, and we're launching a new esports media vertical under their brand, and it's going to be on digital and social media platforms. And the reason that we did this was because we thought that the esports media space was fragmented, right? We thought there was poor discoverability. So if you wanted to wake up and see where's my home for all of esports, both pro and collegiate, amateur, single event, it was really, really difficult to find that place. Like there's very few places that are like IGN for esports. And I do know that IGN tried to do an esports vertical as well. So we wanted to provide a place for esports content that mattered. So we wanted to bring a single media brand to bring esports together, provide a home connecting fans to the teams, and a place where the brands could also go. Conversely, if you're a pro esports team, a collegiate organization or collegiate team, we wanted you to have a home as well, right? So we wanted to create this place where you can post your stories and we would syndicate them and push them up as an affiliate program, potentially bringing revenue to a lot of different organizations. I can go here to find out, how the, Stockton University is doing at the same time that I'm finding out how Cloud9 is doing, right? And the stories would have sort of over time that would be based around my preferences. But it's a place where, all esports has a home here, a dedicated dedicated to league, team, and player pages. And we also wanted to hire a staff that we've been selecting over the last 4 months to curate and develop comprehensive coverage so that we can have people on the scene So we can have somebody at the League of Legends finals and somebody at the Rocket League finals, and create content pipelines that supported all sorts of endemic esports organizations, so we can get all the content pushed into our site. Does that make sense so far?
So I want to reiterate some of the things that you said, just to make sure. And explain to our members if there's any confusion here. So we have entered into a relationship with a media company, probably the largest sports media company in the world.
Mhm.
Can't say much more than that because there's an announcement that's coming later that we kind of really don't want to get in trouble with their lawyers about. Spoiler.
I don't want to get in trouble with their lawyers.
Yeah. So we're trying to arm you with information, and we probably should explain this a little bit better, and I'll take responsibility for that. We're trying to arm you with this information and give you details without saying the name, because I think that's where the lawyers get really scary, so that you can prepare yourselves and take action to be in a position to take advantage of this, right? So it's kind of weird, right? We can't tell you the name, but we can tell you all the parts around it, so that you can actually do things now when that when the name comes out, it'll make a lot of sense. Anthony is taking lead on that part. He is the point person on there. He's also the person who fought really hard, like, why can't I say the freaking name? And they were very clear in saying that no, you can't, because they have their own. This is a whole new silo being launched by a very famous sports media company.
And Michael has spoken to them as well. We did a video, and
yeah,
it's not going to be that long, honestly, before we can announce it. But I think you're making a good point. You're trying to prepare people. So what does that even mean? Right. So I could show you some really quick mock-ups that I scrubbed to make sure that the organization isn't shown here. Right. So I'll put that up on a screen. So what does that mean? Right. So a lot of what we're talking about here, especially with the collegiate esports scene, is that we're going to cover esports in a way that is very similar to what you see from the major media outlets, from like Yahoo, CBS, ESPN, Sports Illustrated, all those sort of companies that cover sports. MSNBC, all those companies that cover football, baseball, basketball. We're going to bring that sort of coverage and that sort of mentality to esports. So that includes coaches, and for the collegiate league, it includes coaches polls like you see in football all the time, bracket play like you see in basketball all the time, exclusive content and interviews, exclusive access to schools, players, and coaches. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that you're very used to. And one of the things that you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to kind of preview things before they happen. So, okay, here comes this championship event coming in 2 weeks. So let's start talking to the players. Let's start talking to the coaches, and then see where that goes, right? And build up some hype for it. And in the same way that you have like the NCAA, where you have a basketball game and you'll go on ESPN and you'll have an interview before the game. And then you'll see like ESPN.com, they'll have all this stuff leading up to the game, and you'll have the game on ESPN or ABC, a Disney affiliate. And then you go back to ESPN.com to read about, what do the coaches think about this, and see the coaches interviews and see the player interviews. That's sort of the mentality that we're building here. So it's before the event, during the event, very likely we'll restream or point to Twitch or YouTube, depending on the partner. And then come back to the website to be able to talk about, interview the players and the coaches. And then the other big part that you can potentially, and look, we're going to do as much as we can to grow awareness for the collegiate space, which our company has worked in, and we've worked with other companies, including NACE, including Collegiate Star League, to make sure that, we could even do college, high school recruitments and tournaments. Those things are important to growing the space. So because scouting reports, those things will grow over time. They won't be day one, but they'll grow over time. But the thing that we're most excited about is sort of the player database, where we're going to provide an opportunity for all the players to have their own pages on the online portal, the online site. And that's going to be backed up with, news from the events. What sports do you play? What are your statistics? What is your career pipeline? It serves as a way for players to create pages even before they enter the collegiate space of their high school records, and this data is something that we believe will be built up over time, and it'll grow, exponentially. So it's something you could always point your friends and your parents, hey mom, look at this. But it could also be used by other universities to recruit players that are still at the high school level. I'll stop sharing that for a second. I'll go back to you, Mike.
Absolutely. So a few things that I want to ask, kind of to prep on things: content generation and curation. What would be your ask of schools in terms of developing content or delivering it?
That's actually the question, right? Because in a sense, we don't see ourselves creating the content as much as curating other people's content or other groups' content, right? So if you're a school and you have a weekly or daily, it really depends on the school, a weekly or daily esports report. This is what our team did last week. This is what our players are doing today at a party, whatever the content is, or at an event or a charity. We want to be able to put it up under your team's pages, and if it's a bigger event than just your team, in the national spotlight pages, right? So and we are going to send guidelines as well. So we're going to send guidelines and create guidelines, and we already started creating these guidelines of what that content needs to look like in order to be posted. But essentially it answers the question, because at Stockton University is here where I live, Atlantic City. So if Stockton University wanted to post a story about them being one of the best Rocket League schools in the country, in the world, we would take that content, as long as it was edited in a certain way to not, to be fair to the other schools. So it's not like, hey, we're the best. You don't want that kind of stuff. We want to be able to have stories that are not necessarily neutral, but at least not too biased. So we have editorial content guidelines. But we want to promote your school. We want to be able to have the schools promote players coming to their programs. So that kind of content is good, and that'll sit on the Stockton University webpage. Obviously, that kind of stuff can also generate revenue. So the affiliate program will generate, we have ad-based revenue. Some of that will trickle down to the universities and teams and people and streamers as well that generate content for the site.
I'd ask a question, because I know students play a big part beyond just competitors, but also in content creation at institutions. Are students able to participate on behalf of their institutions in terms of submitting content? And does any of that content that is taken and curated, does any of that get credited back to students?
Yeah, though everyone will get credit for their own content. So we're not going to take credit for anybody else's content. I think the editorial, I don't handle the editorial side, but if I was to sort of weigh in on what that could look like, I think each of the programs, let's say that you're going back to Stockton University would have to approve that content in some fashion. Sure. So there is a content facilitator or approvals that the school itself would say, okay, this is a student created piece of content, whether it's written or video, but we endorse this and we think it should go on our page. So, because otherwise it gets a little unwieldy and we can't control it. So we do want point people from each of the access points to be able to say this is something that we endorse. I suppose over time it can get larger than that. So you have fan pages and affiliated pages. That won't be something we launch with, but we hope to get it to that level.
So I'll get to questions in a minute here, but Anthony, first question is, from your perspective, why is this a big deal to a varsity esports program? Why should a school, coach, director, students care about this, without naming names of who it is? And then my second question, on why they should care. The second question is, what would you recommend they start doing or planning for now to take part in this?
The first part is, I think it's going to be really interesting to see esports content alongside national sports content, right? I can't talk about too much about how the media will be displayed. It will be its own page, its own site, and it'll also be intermixed with the other sports content as well. It'll be both. So if you go to the homepage of this media brand, you'll see both, if you go to over time, if you want to, I want to know about Boston sports, you'll see, the Patriots, the Red Sox, and the University of Boston esports team, right? So all those things. I think that's an exciting thing that is different than what you've seen before. And it's putting esports on an equal footing with the other sports. And the truth is, the more that people watch the esports content or click on it or discover it, the more weight it'll be given, right? So it's really completely up to us being the esports fans, players, media, organizers, the ecosystem. The more seriously we take this content, the more seriously it will be taken and promoted. And over time, it'll, you can imagine where you could see it start to equalize the sports content. So I think that's different. The second question is, how do universities and colleges start preparing for that? I think part of it is creating a content plan. Who's in charge of that content plan? How is that content plan created? What is the point of that content plan? We are going to send out, it's going to be, you don't have to start from scratch. We are going to send out sort of media packages, what we're looking for, the length of video, the kind of video. How do you get your content on because we're going to have like a morning show. How do you get your content on that morning show? But deciding who's in charge of curating it from within the organizations and who makes the content as well is going to be something that you can start preparing for now.
And I'll point out, beyond the individual campus perspective, we're also talking about NACE, NACE Star League, Playfly Esports is also, we already generate content now, but delivering it with the aspirations of getting more eyeballs, getting it in a more premier level spotlight than really anything collegiate, definitely esports has had before. All right, now there were some questions, and I do want to open this up. We will be careful on the answers we get because dude, honestly, really, that's about it.
How do we expect these to impact like university media rights deals and media deals if the university were has them?
So the question is, do we think that this might have any impact on a university media rights deal that is already in place? Is there concerns around that?
No, because we're approaching it from a journalistic point of view. So we're not yet doing broadcasting the games themselves. So it shouldn't impact. The way that I would look at it is you take that existing media rights partner, and we will probably work with that partner to do the pre and post game analysis and coverage. But it shouldn't, for the first couple of years, it shouldn't impact any existing media rights packages or relationship.
Your question?
Yeah.
Okay. I got you right there. Yep.
Basically, sorry. I'm just really confused. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of things like this could be a news aggregate. My undergrad's in media, television specifically, so I'm trying to get a handle on kind of what we're looking at here without saying names. Which I understand NDAs, all that sort of stuff. So is this just an opportunity for us to, wire PR information that you guys can pick up as a news source to put in, spread across, the whole, the internet or whatever? So we have a centralized location for esports collegiate news at a pro level, or I mean, like at a professional news source level.
Anthony, I don't know. Can you hear any of that? I just want to.
Yeah, I can hear that. I mean, I get his confusion, but I think part of it is if you, and I mentioned those 4 or 5 media sites, the sports sites, existing ones, right? I think it's really 2 things. One, that we're going to cover the events. So those events are going to be covered as news and media, right? So that doesn't really involve participations from the universities other than being in interviews and such, right? So that's fairly clear cut, I hope. the other side of it is that we are approaching this in a little different way, right? We are sort of trying to create an endemic system, meaning that we don't want to be the ones that tell you what is important. We want you to also help decide what's important, right? So if a university has a piece of, we call it PR, we could also call it news, because it doesn't have to be just a public relations piece, right? It could be like legitimately this person was traded, or this person, won, or achieved this level, of this team did this or that. We want to cover that stuff, right? So I think it's a little bit of both. It's media and endemic coverage, and supported from the organizations on the ground. So a little bit of grassroots, a little bit of corporate. And it's easier when you see it, I suppose, but I think it's going to be a little bit of both. I don't know if that answers your question, and you can continue like asking a follow-up if you want.
Yeah, I follow up.
Yes, please.
I just there again, I'm just going to break it down in like a few words. This is
Yep.
going to be a collegiate esports news outlet that is supported by a large sports organization that will
Yes.
help us schools be able to have a little bit more tune in. So like if I want to know if Oklahoma City University played Dallas Baptist University in Overwatch and who won, I'm going to go to your site and be able to get that information.
Yes.
If it's, and in particular, if it's from NACE Star League, that's automatically pretty much being fed by us. So like,
Yes.
there are instances, you don't have to report your own wins or losses. Like that's on us to do for you.
And where will this end up being? Is this primarily just through web?
The question is, the content that's being curated, is it primarily going to be displayed online on a website, or where do you think it'll be distributed through?
But it's a standard, right? I think the leading edge stuff for us anyway is going to be, TikTok blurbs, like the morning show. I think part of what we're trying to do is create people don't like to read things, right? So we're trying to create a format that is quick to read. And if you want to learn more, you should be able to skim through videos about the event. So for example, let's say there's two universities play each other in an NACE Star League. We want to be able to create a channel where if for the first couple of years, this is the official report, and you can go and watch the interviews and the analysis and stuff, right? We'll have the links to the videos if they still exist on Twitch and on YouTube. But over time, we want to be able to say, okay, well, this is what the teams and the universities and the fans have to say. So like a content hub for each of these events, right? And each of these teams is where we want to take it.
So is the NACE relationship with like Go and Hammer, or is it with this larger organization?
It's the same thing. Like, we represent the organization with this thing, so it'll be with the organization, technically through our company, but it'll be through the organization, the sports organization.
That's still confusing to me. So is it NACE with Go and Hammer, or is it NACE with this company represented by Go and Hammer?
The latter. So we own the media rights to this sports brand for, I think it's several years.
Stop looking at me with complicated questions. I am not your guy.
Very legal, yeah. I'm trying to obviously not say too much, but yeah,
you know the answer, but you got to ask me simpler questions. Miles, I see your hand back there.
Yeah, so is this gonna, you kind of twist your words a little bit, Michael, is this gonna be kind of more exclusive to the varsity programs versus like varsity 2 and open divisions? I'm just trying to like understand like.
That's a good question. And
one second, let me repeat the question, because actually it's through the mic that our online attendees can actually hear the audio. But what Miles has asked is, the content that we're looking to push over here, is the content supposed to be really, NACE varsity official programs? Or are we talking about, is there going to be club programs included in there? Who do we want to promote here? And I think that's pretty much the question, right? Now, Anthony, I will let you answer that.
well, I wanted you to answer that. I mean, it's
Okay,
really
I can answer that.
It's really up to NACE and everybody, like,
So primarily it is varsity programs. There are some IP issues around that. Like we want varsity programs because you can actually get permission to use logos and have that monetized. You get in a tricky situation with clubs, and God help you on what marks they're using and whether they actually have permission to use those marks or not. You can try to shift blame around as much as possible, but at the end of the day, if you're not doing it right, you're not doing it right. You run some risk.
What about varsity two?
But so varsity two is still varsity, yeah, and absolutely, I think that's the case. Now, I'm not on the editorial side, and I imagine, let's be honest, the more interesting matches, the more interesting storylines are going to get more play. That's the way it is.
It's what's going to be on the show.
Yeah.
They're going to be talking about the big fights. Like this is good stuff.
So
Yeah.
then, this follow-up question to that is are we gonna have like a media rights like document that is filled out, and so that way you guys have like your ducks in a row as far as like media rights, you're not gonna get in trouble for.
We're not worried about media rights with our schools. That's not a concern of ours.
I didn't know if there's gonna be something in addition that you needed from us that we would need to do.
Not-
You talked
not-
about, like, club levels and.
Clubs, yes, there is more steps. Varsity, that's already taken care of. That's because we're a membership association. There are restrictions on how we can use that, of course, but for something like this, we're not stepping on toes. Clubs, however, we actually have to take more steps there to figure out who's what.
Sorry, one more.
I should have added what the question there was. The question was, do we need to go through extra permissions for media rights, access to IP logos? That was the question to the previous answer I gave.
Yeah, and I don't think you do for we're journalistic, journalistic sort of coverage, right? So as long as we're promoting the event that happened in interviews, those organizations don't pay media rights for logos, and because we're covering fair rights, right? So we don't have to do those things. We're not monetizing the actual event or the games or anything like that. So we aren't making money off the logos per se. We are covering the news around it.
I'll say this is what I've been wanting for a while. Like straight up, I'm really excited for this. This is an outside organization that is coming in to basically make more news and get more public interest in what we're doing in NACE. And so when we have big matches and stuff like that, they're not broadcasting any of their stuff. They're just making sure that there's a one source place for anybody that's interested to be able to get news that's not Twitter or other social media. Yeah, I mean, so to me, this
Well,
is
the point is bigger than Dextero. Dextero is great. I love the guys who are at Dextero.
Yeah, I love Dextero. It's great.
This isn't a sports.
Right. It is. That's niche. Dextero is niche. We're niche, right? And now it's bringing it back to where, let's be honest, the eyeballs are the main weight of the population interested in competition, athletics, right? That's the exciting part. It's being welcomed into back to that world, and we can get a chance to step outside of what is really our niche audience, right? And we all have kind of our own niches, but it's a growth plan.
Is this relationship between NACE and this exclusive, or is the coverage going to cover all collegiate esports and it's all fractured in named organizations?
So I think that question's for Anthony. I can say it's not exclusive to NACE. Like there'll be other collegiate things out there. For example, like CLOL, that it's going to be there.
I can answer that question in a way that I think will create some controversy, but I think that's actually one of the reasons we are so excited about this, right? So some of you know that our company own a collegiate league, and it's a really tough thing to do, right? It is a struggle to run the league, to maintain operations, to maintain fairness, to make sure the teams are on time. So just by itself is a very, very, very difficult thing. But when you do it and other organizations are running the same sports on the same nights, there's very little way to monetize it, right? Because everybody, how many Rocket League tournaments are going on any given night, and which ones are the ones that fans should watch, right? So if I just like Rocket League, I would like to watch the official Rocket League collegiate program, like, just like the NFL and the NBA, which is the important one for me to watch. So what we're saying is, look, if we have the access, obviously, in the name brand, we're saying that if you work with us, we want to narrow the field by self-inclusion. Like, if you don't send us content or you don't tell us about the events, because we're not omnipotent, right? We do have, people that are going to reach out to organizations for all their organizations. But the reason we're on NACE, doing this NACE conference today, is because NACE is the most well-run, the most organized, and the largest. And we think that helps us create that exciting, this is the league you need to watch feel, which, it validates the game and validates us, and it sort of works cyclically to create what we want, which is everybody to take it seriously. Because the one thing that I'm really excited about is I'm sick and tired of talking to people that are my age, because I'm 52, talking to people who have never heard of esports. Oh, universities play esports? It's like, yeah, actually, there's a lot more esports players than, a lot of these other sports that are on television all the time. And I think what we want to do is, okay, well, let's give that coverage so people take it seriously. Not necessarily will start watching us, but we deserve that spotlight as well, right? And when I wake up in the morning, I want to know what happened last night. Right now, I have no idea where to go. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we want to solve.
Yes, please.
So NACE being the biggest and largest, obviously having a part with Conference One, is there going to be priority for Conference One, or is it an equal standing? What is the relationship?
No, we're completely unbiased when it comes to that kind of stuff. I mean, this is all about, I mean, the reality is that there's a lot of vilification for corporations. And, I worked at a lot of big corporations. I could totally understand it. We're obviously trying to make money in the same way that any organization is trying to make money, first to survive and then to grow. Organizations make money, we pay people. So we need content that people want, right? So whether it's Conference One, whether it's NACE, whether it's a whole bunch of other, conferences that exist, and we all know who they are, right? So it's not, but those things will kind of automatically sort themselves out. I strongly believe in NACE, which is why I'm here. But, there is a chance that another organization is going to have content that's stickier, perhaps. And that's just how it's, how it's done. I mean, the XFL and the NFL, one is obviously much more popular than the other, but both are covered to some extent. The coverage will be dictated partially by what people react to. So if we start by putting, I'm just going to use those two brands because it's easy to understand. The XFL and the NFL, if 88% of the people watch NFL content or click on NFL content, well, we're not going to give equal weight to them at that point because we know what people want. So we're news, but people need to be entertained and get the news that they want. So we're going to try to weight it to what people are actually asking for.
Did that answer your question, by the way? Like, how do you choose what content is getting priority?
As an umbrella, Conference One is part of his organization.
Uh-huh.
Common sense says they're going to push Conference One content over NACE content, unless the eyeballs just somehow come to NACE first and much more.
There's more behind.
I can categorically tell you that isn't going to happen.
Yeah. There's more behind that we it's not ready to talk about yet.
Well, hopefully journalistic integrity, right? Like that.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't.
And more.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard to sit back here and be like, all this other information will be coming down the pipe, and for us to be like, okay, I kind of understand a little bit of it. I'm excited for that part, but
Yeah, that's why some of this is weird. But
I called Mike on Friday. We're like, Mike, we were told this, and now we got to deal with this. And this is a statement that I can read.
We can't say the name, hence the oh shoot, right?
sure. Is there a solid date for when we can though?
Anthony, did you say October was a date? I don't remember.
No, it'll be before October. I mean, it'll be before October. And by the way, it is a new brand name under a larger brand name. So it isn't like we're going to say it's, this name that you know and love. There is a very close affiliation. So part of the issue is that getting the copyrights and trademarks and all that stuff in line, and getting all the contracts done, and then making the announcement that is, to go back to what somebody else said, open. We're not only doing NACE, so we're not going to announce exclusively on the NACE summit. We're going to have an open sort of announcement.
And we can't just start listing off different companies and have you wink at a certain name, right? Is that no?
No. But I'll tell you this. So being older, I remember when IGN started. It's not IGN. I remember when IGN started, and I remember all the evolutions that IGN took to get to where they are today, which is one of the biggest internet brands in the world, gaming brands in the world.
So
our goal, yeah.
I'm looking at some of the online members, what they're saying. Is this a company that we will recognize when the announcement will be made? I think we can clearly say, yeah.
Well, yeah. What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the answer is like, yes, he's going to be very familiar with this company.
Small rodents involved.
If I couldn't go through the other thing, I don't think I could do that either. Say the name backwards. You've got a lot of people just having fun with you, Anthony.
Yeah, I was never good at that.
Yeah.
And no, it is not in this room in any way.
Yeah. So
I mean, in the past, my affiliations, I've worked with Comcast on a professional level. I've worked with Disney, Walt Disney, for many years on a professional level. I would say it's on slightly below those brands, only in size, but is well known as both of those brands. I mean, because those are the
that
two
sounds
largest
like
organizations.
a hint as far as you can go, but I do see some more questions over here. Jace?
So, you may or may not have to check, but will it be entirely web-based, or will it roll out with an application as well?
Anthony, the question is this entirely a web-based distribution platform, or will there be like an app released as well?
We're thinking about the app. I think right now we're just trying to get the basis for the website. And the social media, of course, are different apps. So we will have access to other social media. You can do a lot with websites, right? Like if you go to the New York Times, they have the mobile version of that is actually pretty cool, right? So there's probably a lot we can do with just a standard website.
Is there any other questions? And I'm looking at the chat to see if there's any questions that popped up. No, more people just trying to get secrets from me, Anthony.
I really think I'm really sad that we couldn't mention the name. I mean, trust me, I am.
Yeah.
Mike knows very much how I wanted to do that, but I think it'll be worth it. Over time, no one's going to remember this interview anyway, right? But people will remember it when it launches. And I'll just say this: it is very, very important that this is endemic. Major media brands have tried to do this before without mentioning any names, and the whole top-down thing, sportscasters wearing ties, it just doesn't work. I don't think that's realistic. I think it's the old world, right? And I think this has to be, even though it is journalistic, a lot of it is going to be the organizations themselves having a clear, authentic voice, whether we like it or not, right? We're going to, one of the things that we wanted to do was, and I'm reading these kind of brand tent poles, is be comprehensive, right? Around the clock coverage for both pro and collegiate. Journalistic, you want to cover the drama, competition, the passion, authentic, everything is inside out, and what will take story beats from anyone. We want to be authoritative, and that just means being honest with a high level of journalistic excellence for the stuff that we produce. and celebrate the spirit of competition. And that's good and bad. Like, I think one of the things you don't see a lot in the esports space that you see a lot in sports are interviews with people who lost, right? Because, you know, the agony and defeat thing from ABC Sports, it's news, it's interesting, and it shows you a lot about the competitors, right? Like, someone to get to that position and lose, that's a story, and it's an interesting story. I don't know if you guys have been watching that Players television show. I think it's on Paramount. If you're watching that, that's obviously like a mockumentary, but it really is pretty good. And those are the kind of stories we want to be able to tell. Every university has one. We did an event here, like we actually hosted the event here in New Jersey where Rutgers played Stockton. And I don't want to make fun of Rutgers, but Stockton kicked their butt twice, right? And, you know, Stockton is a Division III school. Rutgers is a Division I school, one of the biggest schools there is. And for this little tiny Division III school to take on Rutgers and beat them twice was a real story, right? Just the Rutgers wins events all the time, but when Stockton beat Rutgers, the joy that came from Stockton's team, and then who later became one of the best teams in the world, right? That's a real story. And those are the kind of stories you want to be able to tell. And finally, you know, it's a community-based thing. So you guys will decide what's important as much as we do.
Okay. So I want some takeaway items here, just to rehash it, to make sure everyone's on the same page. When this is announced, you'll be sharing with us. We'll distribute to every school, kind of a content guide outline, how to develop the content so that it can be inserted in this. But that'll be coming out from you guys, and we'll help deliver that to the appropriate people. Your request, if this sounds interesting to any school or team, is to make sure they have a content plan in front of them and ready to go for this coming season. And I think those are the two big takeaways, right? Expect more announcements coming soon, develop your own content plan, and a content guide will be coming out here shortly, probably in tandem with the announcement itself.
Right. And this is like year one, right? So we're going to grow this thing. So things that don't work, we fix, and things that work, we double down on. So this is going to be exciting, and where we can take it is where I think it's esports time to take the spotlight, to be quite honest with you.
Sounds good. Before we go, is there any other questions? Let me check the online part as well. I think we're good there. Well, Anthony, this is exciting. It'd be a lot more exciting if we didn't get told on Friday we couldn't share the name yet. But that is coming up soon, I promise. And thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you fielding what answers you could. And thank you everyone for your time as well.
Thank you very much, and talk to you very soon. We're excited about what's going on here.
All right. See you, Anthony.
Bye, guys.